Harry received a text from Troy, informing him that he had done the deed. "Rebecca, did you call the reporters?" "Yes, they're on standby." Harry eagerly rushed to the Grand Hotel to get rid of Kim. It wouldn't be strange if she were to make an impulsive decision, like jumping out of the 8th-floor balcony after being defiled. If Kim wasn't killed, she would always be a thorn in his side at the company. He could only relax if she was dead. When Harry opened the door to room 8088, he came into an empty room. He looked around in confusion. Harry was startled when the door suddenly slammed closed behind him. He turned around and saw an unfamiliar woman in a tight dress and heels. Who are you?" The woman sized him up. "Not bad, but you're not my type." 1 second was all it took for her to throw Harry onto the bed. She tied his arms and ankles to the frame. "What are you doing? Where's Troy? If you dare lay a finger on me, I'll get him to kill you." Harry brought up Troy's name to intimidate the woman, but she wasn't fazed in the slightest. On the contrary, she looked confused. "Troy? Who's that?" Meanwhile, a crowd of reporters with their cameras were gathered at the hotel lobby. Rebecca was at the center. "Everyone, please listen carefully. In a few minutes, you'll be using your cameras to record the vice president of the Cassidy Group, Kim Cassidy." The reporters were thrilled at the prospect of capturing news that would make the headlines. Aren't we at a hotel? Could this be a scandal? Isn't she married? Is she having an affair with her client? Do you think he's more handsome than her husband? Rebecca smiled. "If you want to know the truth, head up to room 8088 and see for yourselves." The reporters swarmed into the elevator. When the elevator doors opened, they bumped into a beautiful woman, but they ignored her and filed into room 8088. When they raised their cameras, they paused and looked at each other. The scene inside was exactly like how Rebecca had imagined it, but the person being humiliated wasn't Kim. It was her brother, Harry. Harry was tied to the bed. His hair was messy, and red lipstick was smeared on his skin. He was shirtless, and his pants were undone. Rebecca rushed to the bedside in a panic and untied him. She kept her voice low. "What's going on?" Harry pushed her out of the way and grabbed his shirt. "Some woman tied me up and messed up my clothes before leaving the room," he whispered. One of the reporters snapped out of his shock. "Breaking news! Harry Cassidy slept with his client at the Grand Hotel." The rest of the reporters followed suit and aimed their cameras at Harry. They had caught him in the act. Harry could already imagine his picture being plastered all over the news tomorrow. "Nothing happened between me and her." But his words fell on deaf ears. The reporters weren't interested in the truth. Harry and Rebecca hurried out of the room and ran to their car to escape the reporters. This had to have been Kim's doing. By the time they returned home, the news had already spread across the city like wildfire. Harry's scandal became the new hot topic for gossip. Kim and Stephen were both present. "Grandma, you can't leave this alone," Harry exclaimed. "This happened to me because of Kim." Rebecca backed him up. "Why did you do this to my brother?" Righteous indignation flickered in Helen's eyes. "You had better explain yourself." Kim gave them cold looks when they ganged up on her. They were the ones who tried to frame her, but they were trying to make her out to be the culprit. Stephen sneered. "Grandma, you told Kim to escort a client at the Grand Hotel, but Harry was there as well. Isn't that weird?" "What's so strange about that?" Rebecca shot back. "Grandma didn't trust Kim to escort an important client, so she asked my brother to accompany her. Is there a problem?" "No problem at all. But even though you say it was business, who's to say he wasn't there to meet with another client? And who would have thought that he would resort to such tactics to get a client to sign a contract with him?" Kim cut Harry off when he was about to defend himself. "Grandma, I did as you asked and escorted the client to the company. I never bumped into Harry at the hotel." Kim shifted the responsibility onto Harry to force them to expose their collusion. "You escorted the client?" Helen echoed. "All right, let me ask you this. Where is the client?" The so-called client was Troy, but that was just his cover. After he did what he came to do and received compensation, he would return to San Francisco. Kim had to be bluffing because there was no reason for him to linger in Los Angeles. Even if she used the excuse that Troy couldn't make it and he had sent someone else to take his place, It wouldn't be difficult for Harry to contact Troy and tell him to clarify that he never did such a thing. This would be exposed to the media, and Kim would have no way out. This was precisely what Helen, Harry, and Rebecca wanted. Even though this wasn't their original plan, the outcome would still be the same. At that time, Kim would have no choice but to resign from the company. However, to everyone's surprise, Kim announced that the client waited outside. Helen gave Kim a doubtful look. Kim, you're the vice president of the Cassidy Group. Your position entails honesty and sincerity. If you're lying, you'll no longer be deemed worthy of your position. Kim smiled and pointed at the door. I'm not lying. Look, the client's coming in. Everyone turned to the door. It was Troy in the flesh. He entered the room in large strides and stopped in front of Helen. You must be Miss Helen. I've heard all about the Cassidy Group from Miss Kim, and I'm pleased to announce that I would like to invest $500 million into your company. Helen was stupefied, but it wasn't just her. Harry and Rebecca were just as astonished. Troy was only a subordinate of the Black Dragon Guild. How could he afford to invest $500 million into a random company that had no relations to his organization? Troy, are you joking around? Harry questioned. Before heading to the hotel, he had sent Troy the remaining payment of $500,000. Troy looked at him with a dissatisfied expression. I'm not joking. Also, don't call my name without honorifics. We're not acquaintances. Harry was speechless. There was nothing he could do or say. Regardless of Troy's position, he was still a member of the Black Dragon Guild. He couldn't risk going against him. But that wasn't the end. What shocked Harry even more was that Troy really did plan on investing $500 million into the Cassidy Group. Troy even came prepared with a contract. It was clearly stated that Kim was to personally manage these funds. Later that night, Stephen and Kim went home after the fiasco was settled. Natalie wasn't happy to find out where Alice had gone. What? Do you actually send her to Los Angeles Academy? Are you crazy? That's a school for high-class families. The enrollment fee alone is $500,000. Tell me honestly, did you use Kim's money to pay for the expenses? Mom, he didn't take a cent from me, Kim said. She was also curious as to where Stephen had gotten this money from. It was not a small amount by any means. Are you expecting me to believe that? Kim, you had better divorce him sooner rather than later. He'll end up taking all your money if this continues. Also, did you forget about the owner of Global Investments' generosity? He'll show up someday, so what's wrong with letting go of your freeloader husband? Kim shot Natalie down in annoyance. Why do you keep going on and on about that? I'm not getting a divorce. Natalie ignored Stephen's existence and whispered in a loud voice. Have you forgotten about my mom's 70th birthday? It'll be coming up in a week. Our family will be paying her a visit on the day of. You can't bring Stephen along. Just find a way to contact the owner of Global Investment and invite him instead. What are you talking about? Stephen is my husband. Of course I have to take him with me. As for the owner of Global Investment, I've never seen him before. After arguing with Natalie for some time, Kim stormed off to her room. Stephen followed her. Are you really going to bring me to your grandma's 70th birthday? Of course, you're my husband. Who else would I take with me? My mom's always been like that. Don't take what she said to heart. When I meet the owner of Global Investment, I'll return the Moon of the Nile and this house to him. Stephen was amused by her determination. He wouldn't be taking those gifts back, even if his life depended on it. Have you thought about your grandma's birthday present? Yeah, I've talked about this with Mom. She said that everyone in her family knows how much wealth the Cassidy family has, so she asked to prepare the perfect birthday present. But the Cassidy family has never favored us, so we don't have that much money in savings. Even so, Mom put in a lot of effort and managed to get her hands on a valuable ginseng and herbal tonic. Stephen thought about it. That's not a bad gift. What about your grandpa? What's he interested in? My maternal grandparents were both politicians in the past. When they retired, they became mayors. When they were still politicians, they once drank this particular alcohol that they were very fond of. They've been trying to find it ever since, but none of the brands they've seen in stores are the same. Was it something expensive? I'm not sure. Compared to the brands we have today, what they're looking for is most likely outdated and inferior. I don't understand why they like it so much. As for Stephen, he understood the sentiments of Kim's grandparents. The liquor they were searching for may not be the most expensive or one of the best, but to them it was special. Back in the day, when they were only starting out as politicians, there was a special supply of alcohol distributed amongst the higher ranks. Kim's grandparents weren't eligible to receive a bottle for themselves, but they somehow managed to get a taste. They attributed this alcohol as something special that they would only be able to enjoy once they reached a higher-ranked position. But to their dismay, this alcohol had phased out after they reached the top. After Kim went to bed, Stephen gave Jack a call. In a week, I'll be going to Santa Ana for Kim's maternal grandmother's 70th birthday. Are you aware of any special liquor they use to hand out to the higher-ranked officials of the city? There's a military camp in Santa Ana, Jack said. Xavier Riley is one of the generals who the palace has trained. I believe he might know what you're looking for. When you arrive in the city, you can meet Xavier and ask him personally. As the Grand Palace Master, Stephen had the authority to command the country's military. Xavier was an elite general in the military, trained by the palace. He was known as one of the country's 4 great generals. These 4 generals used to serve the previous Grand Palace Master. The liquor that Kim's grandparents enjoyed back then were now only made for specific departments in the military. It was much more expensive than the liquor that ordinary high-level officials enjoyed. This special liquor would be the perfect present for Kim's maternal grandparents. The days following the incident at the hotel were peaceful. Troy's $500 million investment, along with the other $500 million investment from Global Investment, the Cassidy family's crisis was finally resolved. In addition, the Cassidy Group thrived thanks to Kim's outstanding skills in business. They were rising up the ranks in the industry with each passing day. During this time, Stephen received a call from Andrew. Mr. Adams, Melinda has arrived in the city. She's been laying low since then, and I suspect she's scheming something in secret. What would you like us to do? Continue to keep an eye on her for now. I want to see if she's more capable than my cousin Garrett. A week passed in the blink of an eye, and today was Kim's maternal grandmother's 70th birthday. Santa Ana wasn't that far from Los Angeles, but because the road was currently being repaired, driving wouldn't be as convenient. Natalie and Kim decided to take the train instead. The commute would take around an hour. When they were about to leave the house, Natalie noticed Stephen following them. She rolled her eyes and pulled Kim aside. How many times have I told you? If you bring him with you, you'll only be making a fool of yourself. Stephen is my husband. How is bringing him to see my grandparents considered an embarrassment? Natalie heaved a sigh. Fine, he can come. She shot him a glare. Stephen, when we arrive, you had better watch your mouth. Don't speak out of turn, understand? Stephen gave her a bright smile. Don't worry, Mom. I won't embarrass you. I've even prepared a gift for Grandma. Natalie was a little surprised, but she composed herself. You have a present? I doubt it's anything good. I'll be grateful if it's something normal. At the train station, Natalie and Kim passed through the security checkpoint without a hitch, but the alarm sounded when Stephen walked through. The security guards were on high alert. They surrounded Stephen and carefully searched his backpack and the boxes he was carrying. After repeated inspections, they didn't find anything out of the ordinary. They suspected the alarms went off because of something on his person. Sir, we'll need to inspect you further. Please cooperate and follow us inside. We didn't break any rules, Kim said nervously. Why are you taking him away? Natalie glanced at her watch. Hurry up, Stephen. If we don't hurry, we'll be late. Stephen reassured them before following the security guards into the room. The security guards were stunned when he took off his jacket and sweater. His torso was covered in scars. On closer inspection, they were from bullet wounds. After the priest saved him, Stephen had experienced all sorts of trials. Gunfights were a common occurrence. He also participated in one particularly gruesome battle in which the 4 generals were surrounded by 1,000 foes. Stephen had single-handedly taken down all 1,000 enemies and saved the 4 generals. From then on, he became the designated successor of the palace. The security guard aimed his gun at Stephen. Who are you? If you don't speak truthfully, we'll have to use force. The other 4 security guards pulled out their guns. "You're not qualified to ask about my identity," Stephen said calmly. To him, the guns were nothing more than scrap metal. They didn't pose a danger. "I suggest you talk instead of making your situation worse," the lead security guard said. He was ready to fire the moment Stephen made any suspicious movements. In his eyes, Stephen was an extremely dangerous individual. However, before the security guard could react, Stephen moved, and the gun in his hand disappeared. The security guard blinked and saw his gun in Stephen's hand. It had been dismantled. The other security guards were shocked, but no one dared to shoot. The lead security guard instructed his colleagues to report this to the higher-ups. Stephen didn't stop them. Soon, a crowd of police officers entered the room. "We're doomed," Natalie exclaimed. "They're definitely here for Stephen. Just what did he do to make so many of them come here?" Kim's mind was also in a mess, and Natalie was making it worse. "Mom, stop it." A while later, a squad of armed soldiers arrived and surrounded the security room. Natalie started panicking. "Even people from the army are here. This is it. Stephen's done now. Kim, let's hurry up and leave. We should cut off ties with him as soon as possible." Kim was speechless. "How can you be like this? Stephen is your son-in-law. You don't even know what happened." "I'm saying this for your own good. If we don't leave now, it'll be too late." In the room, the lead security pointed Stephen out to the chief security officer. "He's a suspicious and dangerous individual." The chief security officer scrutinized Stephen, but he couldn't sense any malicious intent. "Please show us your ID. We'll need to verify your identity." "Sure." Stephen took out his ID and gave it to him. The chief security officer passed it to his colleague, who left to take care of it. A minute later, his colleague returned and informed him of the results in a low voice. "His identity is confidential? Are you positive?" "Yes, I believe there's more to this man than meets the eye. I'm afraid that we'll be investigated by the National Security Agency for attempting to access an S-rated classified file." The chief security officer glanced at Stephen warily. They couldn't risk an investigation from the National Security Agency. Just who was this man? Several soldiers entered the room. One of them showed his ID. "Hello, I'm Captain Floyd, the commander of Santa Ana's Special Forces." Seeing the soldiers armed with guns behind Captain Floyd, the chief security officer didn't even need to check his ID to know that it was real. Captain Floyd didn't pay any attention to the chief security officer. He and the other soldiers went up to Stephen and saluted him. "Santa Ana's Special Squadron Leader, Captain Floyd, is here to report to the Commander-in-Chief." The chief security officer broke out in a cold sweat. There weren't many people in this country who could command the army. One of them was the Grand Palace Master. To think that the young man in front of him was that mysterious commander? Captain Floyd gave the chief security officer a warning. "We've received news that one of your employees attempted to access an S-rated file." "Captain Floyd, this is a misunderstanding." "Attempting to access an S-rated classified file is a crime in and of itself. Calling it a misunderstanding does not suffice as an explanation. I believe the National Security Agency's investigation team will come looking for you very soon. If you have anything further to say, tell them when they arrive. Furthermore, today's incident is top secret. The commander does not want this to get out." "I understand," the chief security officer said frantically. The speed at which Santa Ana's army took action had exceeded Stephen's expectations. Los Angeles was within their jurisdiction. After Xavier found out that Stephen would be coming to their city soon, he had kept tabs on him to make sure that no problems would arise. After all, Stephen was the Grand Palace Master. Stephen was satisfied with how they handled the situation. "Captain Floyd, well done. I'm heading to Santa Ana for personal matters, and I don't want my visit to be high profile. When you get back, tell Xavier that I'll meet with him soon." "Yes, sir." Captain Floyd saluted him before leading the other soldiers away. Kim hurried over to Stephen when he finally came out of the security room. She gave him a once-over. "What happened? Did they make things difficult for you?" Stephen smiled. "No, it's fine. Their equipment malfunctioned, that's all." Natalie waved her hand. "Hurry up, we have to go. If we don't get on the train now, we'll have to take the next one, and we'll be late for your grandmother's birthday." The three of them rushed to the platform, but the train had already left the station. In fact, it couldn't have been more than 5 minutes since it left. Natalie vented her frustrations on Stephen. "This is all your fault. The next train will be here in 2 hours. There's no way we'll make it in time. And Kim, what did I tell you? You should have left him at home." Without saying anything, Stephen went back the way they came. Seeing him walking away by himself, Natalie became even angrier. "Kim, do you see this? Not only did we miss the train because of him, he even wants to leave us behind." "Mom, Stephen isn't that kind of person." "I think he is." Meanwhile, Stephen went back to the security room to have a talk with the chief security officer. According to him, the next train to Santa Ana would arrive in 2 hours, but there was a special train to Santa Ana that could leave the station at any time without affecting the operation of the other trains. 10 minutes later, Stephen returned to the platform. "In a minute, there'll be a special train headed directly to Santa Ana." Natalie scoffed. "I've never heard of that. Do you think your family owns the railway department or something?" In the next second, the sound of a whistle caught everyone's attention. The train pulled into the station, and the words "Los Angeles Special Line" labeled on the front. Natalie and Kim boarded the train in a daze. Kim didn't believe it until they arrived in Santa Ana ahead of schedule. "Stephen, don't you have something to tell us?" Stephen glanced at Natalie. "If I said my family owns the railway department, would you believe me?" For a moment, Natalie was genuinely amazed, but it wasn't long before she realized that it was impossible. "If you were really that great, you wouldn't have pestered our family for the past 3 years as a freeloader. Only someone like the owner of Global Investment would have a chance to ride this train." "You're right. I contacted him before the train arrived." "I knew it. You're just a freeloader. If you know what's good for Kim, then take the initiative and leave on your own." "Mom, that's enough," Kim snapped. Stephen couldn't help but laugh. He was everything that Natalie wanted in a son-in-law, but at the same time, he was everything she didn't want. "I'm not leaving. I'll be staying by Kim's side for the rest of my life." Kim was embarrassed by his straightforward confession. When they arrived at Natalie's house, 4 luxury cars pulled up to the entrance. Natalie was from the Haynes family, which consisted of her mother, Mavis Haynes, her father, Gordon Haynes, and 4 older sisters. Everyone had married into decent families, and they would all be attending Mavis's 70th birthday. A well-dressed woman and a man in a bright suit walked up to them. It was Natalie's 4th oldest sister, Megan, and her husband. Even though Natalie wasn't in the mood to deal with Megan, she still had to greet her. As for Megan, she would never let go of an opportunity to ridicule her. "Natalie, did you take the train all the way here? Why didn't you drive?" "Aunt Megan, the road from Los Angeles to Santa Ana is being repaired," Kim explained. "It's not convenient to drive." "Is it inconvenient, or were you afraid of being embarrassed?" Stephen glanced at Megan's car. "You drove here in a... It's not even that great. What's there to be proud of? Besides, it's not like a luxury car would help get here any faster." Megan stared at Stephen. "You sure know how to talk big. Who are you?" Recognition dawned on her. "Oh, you're Natalie's good-for-nothing son-in-law. I've heard about you. Your freeloading has no bounds, and it seems like your bragging is endless too." Megan's daughter stepped out of the... "Do you know how much this car costs? Over $1 million. It was a gift from my boyfriend, bought by my parents. What about you, Kim? Did your husband prepare a gift for your family?" Natalie answered without hesitation. Megan's daughter laughed. "Is that so? But Kim, I heard your husband drives you to and from work every day in a..." Natalie's other sisters approached them with their respective husbands. "What are you chatting about?" Compared to Megan's car, their cars were even more luxurious. Even though Natalie's 4 older sisters and their husbands looked down on her, they were quick to change the topic and brag about their families. Their husbands were especially interested in discussing matters related to the city. Linda's husband was the head of the local government in Santa Ana. He was eager to tell them about a big shot who took the Los Angeles Special Line to visit their city today. "I've heard about that," Kelly's husband said. They say the commander of Santa Ana's special forces, Captain Floyd, personally welcomed them. I wonder who this big shot was to have a commander go out of his way to greet them. With the exception of Natalie, her older sisters married into families who held positions in the government or the police department. Naturally, they were interested in this topic. As a government official, Linda's husband was privy to more information than the others. I heard that the commander-in-chief is visiting the city for a military inspection, and he's keeping a low profile because he's observing from the sidelines. If someone like him were to visit our home, it would be a great honor. Kelly's husband shook his head. It's a shame we don't have the connections to set up a meeting with him. My daughter's boyfriend is a soldier in the Santa Ana Army, Gianna's husband said. The commander-in-chief is out of our league, but I'll ask her if she can get her boyfriend to invite Captain Floyd over. Megan's husband approved of his suggestion. It would be an honor if Captain Floyd were to visit our home. Stephen had been listening quietly, but he spoke up at the mention of Captain Floyd. Is it really that hard to invite him here? I can even invite the famous General Xavier Riley. Everyone turned their attention to Stephen. To the public, Natalie and her sisters were kind and friendly with each other, but they were secretly competing for the family's business. Their parents, Gordon and Mavis, didn't have any sons. If they did, following tradition, he would have inherited the family's business. However, they only had 5 daughters. Whoever's husband was superior in terms of status, connections, and wealth would have a higher chance of leading the company. You found a great son-in-law, Megan said. He's incredibly... Today is Mom's birthday. You should educate your son-in-law. He can't be talking like this in front of our parents. Natalie felt like she'd lost all face before they even went inside. She glared at Stephen and scolded him. Think before you talk. Stephen shrugged. Whether they believed him or not wasn't important. Gianna's daughter made a call before coming back. My boyfriend said he'll take a leave of absence today and join us. He's not sure if he'll be able to invite Captain Floyd, but he said he would try. Someone of Captain Floyd's rank isn't just someone you can simply invite. Linda's husband nodded in agreement. That's true. It's fine even if he can't make it. You and your boyfriend did your best. Kelly's husband and Megan's husband also agreed. It's good enough that your boyfriend can come. We can't force Captain Floyd to join us if he's busy. Gianna's daughter's boyfriend was a sergeant in the military, and everyone in the family thought highly of him. Their attitude towards him was completely different from their impression of Stephen. Soon, Mavis's 70th birthday celebration was underway. Natalie's sisters' husbands invited several politicians and businessmen to celebrate with them. Their family was wealthy, and they valued appearances. Anyone who could invite guests of a higher position was enough to prove their connections and solidify their place in the family. Many more luxury cars pulled up to the entrance. Linda's husband had invited his colleague, who held high positions in the local government. He welcomed and introduced them. These were all influential figures in the city. One word from them could decide the fate of all enterprises within the city. As the oldest daughter, Linda was overjoyed to see that her husband was so capable. Kelly's husband was a businessman, and his connections extended across the city. He stepped forward and introduced his guest. While his guest wasn't as influential, they were known for their economic strength. This guest would benefit their family greatly. Megan's husband had invited the owner of a well-known trade and commerce enterprise. Kelly's husband was envious of his guest. As a businessman, having connections with someone in the trade and commerce industry would make his life much easier. As for Gianna's husband, he didn't have any extraordinary political or business connections, but his daughter's boyfriend, Edward, was a sergeant in the Santa Ana military. Edward is a sergeant. Do you know what this means? He works closely with the commander of the Special Forces, Captain Floyd, and the general, Captain Riley. Everyone surrounded their family in amazement. Edward was flustered because he actually didn't have the qualifications to sit in the same office as Captain Floyd, let alone the General Xavier. But in order to not ruin the mood, Edward could only leave the misunderstandings alone. Will Captain Floyd be able to come today? Gianna's husband asked. He has an important mission today, so I don't think he'll be able to make it. Truthfully, Edward didn't have the qualifications to meet with Captain Floyd, but he couldn't bring himself to refuse his girlfriend's parents' request, so he could only lie. Gianna's husband didn't think much of it. As a soldier, of course missions are more important. And even though your comrades are on an important mission, you were able to take a leave of absence to celebrate your girlfriend's grandparents' birthday. That is enough to show your sincerity. Everyone agreed with him. Edward was dumbfounded, but he had no choice but to nod along. Yes, you're right. At this time, a rumble sounded outside the house. 2 green jeeps had just arrived. Several soldiers in uniform stepped down. The 2 soldiers at the front appeared to be of a high rank. One of them went up to the family's butler and asked him to inform Gordon and Mavis that Captain Riley and Captain Floyd were here to celebrate Mavis's 70th birthday. Everyone, including Kim and Natalie, stared at Stephen. Was he the one who invited them? Besides Natalie, everyone in her family had introduced their guests. To begin with, Gordon and Mavis weren't pleased that Natalie had visited without her husband. Even though their family was less prominent than the Cassidy family, they were still considered a wealthy family in Santa Ana. Stephen noticed everyone looking at him. What you're thinking is correct. I invited him. When they were busy introducing their guests, he had taken the opportunity to send Xavier a message, asking if he could join him to celebrate his wife's grandmother's birthday. Kelly's husband mocked him. Yeah, right. Captain Floyd's probably here because of Edward. He rushed over as soon as the mission was over, and he even brought Captain Riley with him. This is proof of their close friendship with Edward. Everyone, including the guests, felt like this explanation made more sense. The guests had an even better impression of Edward, and they made a mental note to maintain a good relationship with their family in the future. Meanwhile, Edward was forced into a tough spot. He hadn't told Captain Floyd that his girlfriend's grandmother's birthday was today. After all, with his status, he usually never had the chance to even meet with Captain Floyd or Xavier. They were here because of someone else. As expected, when Captain Floyd and Xavier entered the house, they passed by him. To Edward's surprise, they seemed to be walking towards Stephen. Despite everyone else's doubts, he had a feeling that Stephen was the one who had invited them. Stephen didn't want to reveal his identity, so he subtly gestured for them to ignore him. Xavier and Captain Floyd had no choice but to walk past him and pretend like they didn't see him. Upon seeing this, Edward thought he'd made a mistake. It wasn't Stephen. Xavier and Captain Floyd walked up to Gordon and Mavis instead and introduced themselves. Gordon and Mavis were delighted to see them. Captain Riley, Captain Floyd, thank you for visiting, even though you 2 must be very busy. You must have come because of Edward. Gianna and her husband stepped forward and greeted them. I'm Edward's mother-in-law, and this is his father-in-law. You 2 must be well acquainted with Edward because of his outstanding performance. Xavier was taken aback when the 4 of them mentioned this mysterious soldier named Edward. But since these were Stephen's relatives by marriage, he guessed that this was a cover-up that Stephen had come up with. As such, he could only play along. Yes, Edward's performance isn't bad. Captain Floyd was just as puzzled as Xavier. Who was this Edward? Natalie was in a sour mood. Why is there such a big difference between you and them? Stephen put on an innocent expression. I really did invite Xavier and Captain Floyd. You're shameless. Go over there. Don't stand next to me and Kim. You'll only embarrass us. Stephen turned to Kim. Do you believe me? Kim sighed. I don't know. Xavier and Captain Floyd had important matters to attend to. After greeting Gordon and Mavis, they left in a hurry. The next item on the agenda were the birthday presents. Natalie was confident in the ginseng and herbal tonic that she had prepared. Kim, they've outdone us in terms of networking, but our presents will be better than all of theirs combined. Since Natalie was the youngest daughter, her sisters and their families would reveal their gifts first, starting with the oldest. Linda and her husband purchased a vacation home at the outskirts of the city. The area was famous for its scenery, and it was a great place to stay if one wanted to get away from the hustle and bustle of the city. A well-sought-after vacation home couldn't have been purchased with money alone. However, with Linda's husband's extensive list of connections, buying this house was no problem at all. Gordon and Mavis were happy with their gift. The vacation home wasn't that far away from their house, so it would be a convenient commute whenever they wanted to take some time to relax. Kelly and her husband had prepared a contract worth $500,000. While this wasn't a large sum, the contract represented a collaboration with the guests they had invited. To Gordon and Mavis, this present was priceless. This was essentially a stepping stone towards becoming a first-rate family in Santa Ana. Gianna and her husband had a hobby of collecting antiques. They prepared an antique worth $800,000 as a gift. Gordon loved antiques, and he accepted it with a smile. Since Gordon was pleased, Mavis was also satisfied. When it was Megan and her husband's turn, their gift turned out to be the same exact ginseng and herbal tonic that Natalie had bought. To make things worse, their gift was more valuable and more expensive. Gordon and Mavis were satisfied with the thoughtful gift that had been prepared in regards to their health. Megan was proud when they acknowledged her gift. She turned to Natalie with a smug smile. "It's your turn. I'm really curious as to what you've prepared for Mom and Dad." Natalie became even more flustered when Megan questioned her, but showing up empty-handed was worse than having an inferior present. Natalie reluctantly gave Gordon and Mavis her gift. Compared to Megan's gift that was worth $2 million, hers was only worth $300,000. Megan snickered. "Natalie, did you come here with your family to make fun of us? Your gift is the same as ours." Megan's husband agreed. "We spent $2 million on our gift, but you only spent $300,000. Do you even care about your parents?" Linda chimed in. She only acted like an older sister at times like these. "Natalie, you have to put some effort in if you're picking out birthday presents. Are Mom and Dad only worth $300,000? Natalie was utterly ashamed. Mavis was displeased, but she took the gift anyway. "That's enough. It's rare for Natalie to come all the way here from Los Angeles. I'll accept it." After Natalie and her sisters gave their gifts, it was the younger generation's turn. While Gordon and Mavis had 5 daughters, they also had 5 granddaughters. Linda's daughter was married, and her husband was said to be an executive of a well-known company. They prepared an expensive, nutritious gift for Mavis. Kelly's daughter married into a wealthy family, and they purchased a Maserati sports car for Mavis. "We're old now," Mavis said. "We won't be able to drive a sports car." Even so, she was still happy with the gift, because the car was worth more than $5 million. Gianna's daughter and Edward weren't married yet, but it was about time. Edward prepared a limited edition military blade. While its value was not as high as the first 2 gifts, Xavier and Captain Floyd had visited in person thanks to him. That alone was enough for Gordon and Mavis to deem this blade as a valuable gift. As a soldier, Edward's leave of absence was subject to change depending on the situation. After handing over this gift, he had to rush back to the camp. Gordon approved of Edward's early departure. "Of course, the Army is important. To be this well acquainted with Captain Floyd and Captain Riley must mean that your future will be bright. Hurry and go back." After Edward left, Stephen leaned over to Kim and whispered, "I'm going out to get the birthday present I prepared for your grandparents." Kim nodded. "All right." When Stephen left the house and walked down the street, a Jeep arrived to pick him up. He jumped into the passenger seat. Captain Floyd drove. He saluted Stephen before heading in the direction of the camp. When they arrived, Edward was returning to his troop and caught sight of Captain Floyd. The man walking next to him seemed oddly familiar. Edward felt like the man resembled Stephen, but he quickly dismissed this thought. It couldn't be him. Edward had originally asked for a day of leave, but his superiors informed him that an inspection would be taking place today. And so, he ended his vacation early and hurried back to the camp. Stephen and Captain Floyd met up with Xavier in his office. "Gather your subordinates, and I'll assess them." Xavier smiled. "Mr. Adams, I promise you won't be disappointed. Captain Floyd, tell the Special Forces to gather outside." Before Captain Floyd left, Stephen added, "There's a sergeant named Edward. Let him join the Special Forces." Captain Floyd saluted him. "Yes, sir." The Special Forces were excited after Captain Floyd told them that the Commander-in-Chief would be coming for an inspection. Under Captain Floyd's command, they lined up and waited in anticipation. Edward was among them. He had been surprised when Captain Floyd informed him that he was to join the Special Forces and the inspection. It would be an honor to meet the Commander-in-Chief. Not long after, Stephen, accompanied by Xavier and Captain Floyd, went to the training grounds to assess the Special Forces. The soldiers saluted Stephen when they saw him. As for Edward, he was shocked that Stephen was the Commander-in-Chief. He really was hiding his identity. The Special Forces team, who Captain Floyd had personally trained, were strong and capable. Stephen felt satisfied. As everyone left to return to their duties, Stephen stopped Edward. "Xavier gave me some bottles of alcohol. They're in the truck. Take them back for me later?" Having discovered Stephen's identity, Edward felt honored to work for him. "Yes, sir." Since Stephen was running late, he took a few bottles of alcohol and left first. Edward would take the rest back. At this time, Megan's daughter and her boyfriend had just presented Gordon and Mavis with their gift. It was a beautiful painting. Megan looked around and noticed that Stephen had disappeared. "Natalie, where did your son-in-law go? Did he run away to hide because he didn't prepare a present? I suppose it's a good thing. It'll save him the embarrassment." Natalie was furious as she turned to Kim. "Where's Stephen? He didn't really run away, did he?" Just as everyone was wondering where he had gone, Stephen came back. "I wasn't hiding. I went out to get my gift." Megan pointed at the black bag in his hand. "Is that it?" "That's right." Everyone laughed and ridiculed him. Natalie's son-in-law knows how to be unique. His gift is different from everyone else's. "Is that bag filled with fruits or vegetables?" "I'm guessing it's some kind of specialty from his hometown." The black bag in Stephen's hand was too ordinary. It was no different from the plastic bags given out to customers at a supermarket. The birthday presents thus far had been lavishly packaged. Even Kim had her doubts about this gift. Natalie couldn't hold in her anger anymore. "This is ridiculous! If you couldn't afford a gift, you should have just come empty-handed instead of making a fool of yourself." "Mom, you'll know whether it's a good or a bad gift soon," Stephen said. He went up to Gordon and Mavis and took out a few bottles of wine from the bag. There was no label on them. Megan clicked her tongue. "That's it? Where did you even find these? Do you think these inferior products are worthy of being gifts? There's no brand on the bottles." Stephen ignored her. "Grandpa, I heard that you were searching for a specific liquor that couldn't be found in stores. Have a taste. I'm sure you won't be disappointed." While Gordon had his doubts, he was still curious about its taste. "All right, I'll try it." When Gordon opened one of the bottles, a familiar scent filled the air. As soon as he realized what this wine was, he took a sip to confirm. Gordon whispered to Mavis, "This is the same wine we tried many years ago. Nowadays, not just anyone can get their hands on a bottle because they're distributed in the military." Mavis's face lit up. "What a rare treasure. No matter how wealthy we are, this isn't something money can buy. Natalie, your son-in-law is more capable than he seems." This was the first time Mavis had praised her all day, and it was clear that Gordon loved the gift. Natalie was flattered. She never thought that Stephen could be reliable. Gordon and Mavis were curious as to where Stephen got these bottles of wine. After all, everyone was aware that Natalie's son-in-law was famous for being a freeloader. Stephen hurriedly came up with an excuse. "I'm acquainted with the head of the logistics department in Santa Ana's military camp. He gave me a few bottles when I asked." Gordon and Mavis nodded in understanding. "So that's how it is." Mavis let out a sigh. "It's a pity that these are limited to the military. Don't drink so fast, Gordon. Take it slow. At this rate, you'll be done with these bottles in a day or two." "Don't worry about that," Stephen said. "I can get you enough bottles to fit a truck anytime you want." Gordon and Mavis were amused by his promise. "It's all right. It can't be easy to get that many bottles. This much is already enough for us." Linda's husband looked at Stephen in annoyance. "Exactly. I've been working in the local government for many years, and I've rarely seen this blend of liquor. Do you really think you can use your connections in the military and make them hand over a bunch of bottles? Even Captain Riley wouldn't dare to ask for that many. Only the commander-in-chief would be brave enough. I am the commander-in-chief, Stephen said. Everyone laughed and treated his words as a joke. It was rare for Gordon and Mavis to praise Natalie. She was afraid that Stephen would ruin everything. She glared at him as a signal to be quiet. I'm telling the truth, Stephen said seriously. A big truck of liquor will arrive in a few minutes. As soon as he finished his sentence, a military truck drove up to the entrance. The butler who stood guard at the gates rushed into the house to give his report. A truck from the military is here. It's filled to the brim with bottles of wine. Once again, everyone's gaze fell on Stephen. There was no need to confirm the wine in the truck. It was obvious that it was the military's special wine. Gordon and Mavis exchanged a suspicious glance. Was Stephen that influential? He was always known to be a pushover. Maybe he had been hiding his true identity for these past 3 years. Natalie couldn't help but ask, Is there really a truck full of wine outside? Of course, Stephen answered. Gordon and Mavis headed to the door. Let's go out and see. A military truck parked at the entrance, and several soldiers were moving the boxes of wine onto the pavement. Among these soldiers was Edward. Gianna and her family were excited to see him. Everyone look, it's Edward, Gianna exclaimed. He's the one who drove the truck here. Captain Floyd and Captain Riley paid us a visit on Mom's 70th birthday, and they probably wanted to follow up with a gift. Mavis praised her. Your son-in-law is someone to be proud of. Edward was put in an awkward position. He already knew Stephen's real identity, and it made him uneasy to take all the credit. He stole a glance at Stephen, only to find that he was as calm as ever. If it weren't for the fact that he'd signed a confidentiality agreement, he would have clarified right then and there that this truck of wine was Stephen's gift. As a result, Edward could only be vague. Actually, no matter how close I am to my superiors, I'm not qualified to request these bottles of wine. One of the military leaders came to visit today and happened to overhear that my girlfriend's grandma's 70th birthday was today, so they wanted me to bring these over as a gift. Linda's husband immediately knew who it was. According to my sources, there's only one person who fits the bill, the commander-in-chief. He arrived in the city today, and he came for an inspection. Everyone was shocked by the news. There were rumors that the commander-in-chief led the 4 great generals to victory during the battle against foes who coveted their country's territory. And apparently, he had a secret identity, the Grand Palace Master. Even though the palace possessed half of the world's wealth and power, to ordinary citizens, its existence was beyond the reaches of their imagination. The commander-in-chief was a more realistic existence whom the citizens of the country could admire and respect. And this famed commander-in-chief had personally asked Edward to deliver a truck of wine. Mavis could barely contain her excitement. I can't believe the commander-in-chief himself gave me a gift. This is an honor. Gordon was also in awe. Our family's reputation will soar once people know about this. Linda's husband was the first person to flatter Edward. He turned to Gianna and her family. I'm happy for you. Edward has a bright future ahead of him. Even the commander-in-chief recognized his potential. Upon hearing his remark, everyone came back to their senses and complimented them. As Edward's girlfriend, Gianna's daughter beamed with pride. Edward was embarrassed, but the only thing he could do was accept the flattery from the crowd. Natalie, who had been enjoying the praises from the parents, instantly became quiet. No one paid attention to the 3 of them. Everyone crowded around Gianna and her family. On the other hand, Kim wondered how Stephen knew that this truck would arrive today. Megan looked over when the thought struck her. Hold on, I just remembered someone saying that he sent over this truck of wine. He really knows no shame. It's obvious it wasn't him. Everyone's attention shifted to Stephen. He probably knew about this beforehand and came to steal the glory for himself, Kelly added. Luckily, Edward personally drove the truck and foiled his plan. Natalie, I must say, you have a poor eye for people, Linda said. A son-in-law who only knows how to freeload and steal other people's achievements? There's no saving him. Edward was worried when everyone started criticizing Stephen. He rushed to defend him. You've got it wrong. Stephen did meet with the head of the logistics department at the camp. Enough, Mavis said. Edward, I know you're kind and willing to help others, but someone like Stephen isn't worth it. Even if he did meet with the head of the logistics department, how would he have the authority to send over a truck of wine? Gordon agreed with her. In my opinion, Natalie's son-in-law only knows how to bluff. Someone like him isn't worth mentioning. Out of consideration for Edward and the commander-in-chief, we'll let this go. Edward heaved a sigh. The commander-in-chief who they were all talking about was standing right next to them. After the birthday gifts, everyone gathered in the courtyard. Natalie, Kim, and Stephen were sitting at a table far away from the others. Even though Gordon said he wouldn't pursue the issue with the wine, it was obvious that they were being ignored. Natalie was in a bad mood as she watched her older sisters and their families mingle. Compared to the lively atmosphere at the center of the courtyard, their table was silent. Stephen, this is all because of you. It's quiet out here, Kim said. We don't need to deal with their criticisms. Ever since they arrived, she noticed that Natalie's sisters had been targeting them from the beginning. Stephen chuckled. That's right, at least we can eat in peace. Natalie sighed. Meanwhile, their family had no chance of approaching them. This was so embarrassing. Sometime later, Gordon stood up and cleared his throat. Everyone, today is my wife's 70th birthday, and I'd like to make an important announcement. Natalie's older sisters and their families turned their attention to Gordon. They knew that this was the highlight of today's celebration. As you're all aware, my wife and I have 5 daughters. It's time for us to pass down our family's business. Under normal circumstances, this could have been distributed equally among our daughters. However, it has come to our attention that while some of my daughters and their families are outstanding leaders in their respective fields, Gordon glanced at Natalie's table before continuing. There are others who aren't. The 2 of us have given this some thought and have decided to pass down our family's business to the most competent family present. This meant that out of Gordon and Mavis's 5 daughters, only one of them would inherit the Haynes family's company. Everyone glanced at Gianna's family. While their achievements weren't as prominent, Edward would be their son-in-law soon, and he had connections with the commander-in-chief. In terms of future prospects, no one could compare to Gianna's family. Mavis stood up and explained the details. Of course, we won't be choosing the successor. It'll be up to all of you. So show us what you're capable of. Have you heard of the Eastern Sea Group? They've recently announced their new project. They're planning to build a 5-star hotel in Santa Ana that's expected to become a popular tourist attraction. They're searching for an industrial company to take on the construction of their hotel. And in a week, the Eastern Sea Group will hold an event to publicly announce their collaboration. Our family's business, Haynes Industries, specializes in construction, and this will be a profitable project for us. It will also give us an opportunity to establish a relationship with an influential company like the Eastern Sea Group. As such, out of the 5 families present today, whoever they choose to take on this project will become the legitimate heir to our Haynes family. The Haynes family wasn't a first-class family in the city, but they were still worth a few $100 million. Natalie's sisters and their families wanted to inherit the company. They had originally thought that Gianna's family would be named the heir, but it turned out that they would all have a chance to compete. Linda's husband held a high position in the local government, so everyone wondered if he had connections with the Eastern Sea Group. Kelly's husband was the first to question him. I know a lot of people, but the Eastern Sea Group is out of my league. What about you? Since you work in the government, you must have some connection with them, right? Linda's husband denied it immediately. You're overthinking. The Eastern Sea Group is a large corporation. How could I have any connections with them? Contrary to his words, as soon as the celebration was over, Linda's husband planned on going home to get in contact with them. After all, the Eastern Sea Group wanted to construct a hotel in Santa Ana. It would need to inform the local government. Linda's husband already expected his victory. It would only be a matter of time before Haynes Industries was his. Gianna's husband didn't stand a chance, so he decided to show off his daughter's relationship with Edward instead. It's unfortunate, but Edward is a capable soldier in the army. He may be well acquainted with his superiors, but he has no connections in politics or the business industry. Megan's husband joined in the conversation. I have quite a few friends in the business industry. Maybe they can introduce me to the Eastern Sea Group. While the four of them pretended to downplay their achievements and connections, Stephen sent a text to Jack under the table, asking for information on the Eastern Sea Group. According to Jack's intel, the Eastern Sea Group was a subsidiary of the palace. The owner on paper was Andrew. Stephen put away his phone and stood up. Since none of you are confident, why don't you just let me partner with the Eastern Sea Group? Natalie and Kim looked at him in shock. Neither of them expected him to be so bold. Have you lost your mind? Sit down, Natalie whispered. Mom, you're also a daughter of the Haynes family, Stephen said matter-of-factly. Since your four older sisters have the right to compete for the family's business, why can't we do the same? Everyone laughed at him. Stephen, you're just a freeloader. What are you capable of? Do you think the Eastern Sea Group is some kind of small business? They're a large, world-renowned company. Natalie wasn't well liked in the Haynes family, and Stephen was her useless son-in-law who only knew how to freeload. In their eyes, Natalie's family was nothing but a joke. With Mavis's announcement, Edward was no longer relevant. Linda's husband had become everyone's main competitor. Naturally, Kim had heard of the Eastern Sea Group before, and she knew how powerful their company was. Kim tugged on the hem of Stephen's shirt, signaling for him to back down. If this continued, Natalie's reputation in the Haynes family would be worse than it already was. Even though Gordon and Mavis had announced that the most competent family would inherit Haynes Industries, Natalie and Kim hadn't thought about participating in the competition. Despite their objections, Stephen continued. What if our family succeeds and becomes their partner? What are you going to do? Linda's husband snickered. You talk big, but you have nothing to show for it. All right, how about this? If you really do become their partner, I'll admit that I was wrong about you and acknowledge your capabilities in front of everyone. You said it yourself. I didn't force you, Stephen said. Linda's husband scoffed. You make it seem like you've already won. If you lose, you'll have to apologize to everyone here for wasting their time. What do you say? Do you accept this bet? Sure. What's there to be afraid of? It's a deal. After the bet was made, Gordon and Mavis announced that whichever family successfully took on the Eastern Sea Group's project would be appointed the vice president of Haynes Industries. Whoever became the vice president would inherit the company in the future. Soon, the celebration came to an end. Everyone hurriedly said their goodbyes and went their separate ways. Natalie, Kim, and Stephen would be staying at Gordon and Mavis's house for the week. On the way to their rooms, Natalie and Kim made it clear that they weren't happy with what Stephen had done. It's embarrassing enough that you're always stirring up trouble at home, but why would you cause a scene at my parents' house? Not just anyone can partner with the Eastern Sea Group. Mom's right, Stephen. It won't be easy. If you lose the bet, all three of us will be humiliated. Kim, I accepted the bet for your grandparents' sake. It's obvious that Mom's sisters and their families don't care about them. They're only interested in the family business. If one of them really does inherit the company, do you think they'll treat your grandparents well? Only you and Mom understand what it means to respect your elders. When Kim thought it over, she realized that Stephen was right. None of Natalie's sisters and their families would be giving Gordon and Mavis the respect they deserve after they take over the company. There was even a chance that they might cut off all connections with them. Seeing that Kim was still worried, Stephen confidently reassured her. You don't have to worry about being chosen by the Eastern Sea Group. Everyone knows that Haynes Industries specializes in construction. And with your business skills, all you have to do to win them over is to research and be prepared. Kim was less worried after hearing that. She got to work as soon as she was back in her room. She searched up information on the Eastern Sea Group and spent several hours looking it over. Mr. Pollard was the representative from the Eastern Sea Group who would be in charge of this project. He conducted interviews with each potential candidate to assess whether their company would be the right fit for the job. Kim gave Mr. Pollard a call and introduced herself as a representative of Haynes Industries. To her surprise, the call went well. "Stephen, I scheduled a meeting with Mr. Pollard. He told me to visit his office for an interview." Stephen gave her a smile. "Great job. Let's go together." At this time, Linda's husband, Koen, sat in Mr. Pollard's office. After the celebration ended, Koen had made a few calls and managed to get in contact with Mr. Pollard. "If I'm not mistaken, the person who called you just now was Kim Cassidy from Haynes Industries, correct?" "Yes, I've been receiving many calls regarding our project lately. I agreed to a meeting with her because she's from Haynes Industries." "Mr. Pollard, she's not the only representative from Haynes Industries. My son-in-law is famous overseas, and I also work for the local government. I'm sure we'll be more desirable candidates than her." Koen placed a bag on the desk. It was filled with cash. Mr. Pollard agreed without hesitation. "I'll meet your daughter and your son-in-law." "Great. What about Kim?" "Don't worry about her. Your daughter and son-in-law will represent Haynes Industries, and they'll become our company's collaborator. I'll make sure of it." "Good. I'll give him a call and ask him to come in." After preparing for the interview, Kim and Stephen hailed a cab to Mr. Pollard's office. When they arrived, they were surprised to see two familiar faces. Linda and Koen's daughter, Brittany, and their son-in-law, Paul, were waiting in the lobby. Brittany had just received a call from Koen when she spotted Kim and Stephen entering the building. Brittany gave them a disdainful look. "So, it's you, Kim, and your husband. Are you two here to meet with Mr. Pollard?" "Yes, we are," Kim replied. "Do you have an appointment? Mr. Pollard only mentioned me and my husband's name when he spoke about Haynes Industries."
Hi, I'm Stephen.
Want to know my secrets?
Then download the Pocket FM app and listen to the exciting episodes of Secret Succession now.